Sothoth is a fictional cosmic entity, an outer god created by H.P. Lovecraft. He is a core part of the Cthulu Mythos. Sothoth is an unfathomably powerful deity, and one of the most powerful one from the outer gods, a race of ancient deities who wield great power, size and intelligence, equal and possibly even superior to Sothoth himself, as well as the largest and most intelligent. Before scaling this madman, let's first check out the cosmology of the verse. There are infinite higher spatial dimensions in each universes, with everything in a lower dimensional space being derived from an infinitesimal portion of something in a higher dimension, the latter of which corresponds to substance and reality, while the former is shadow and illusion. This hierarchy, as mentioned before, has no end, and extends up to the dizzy and reachless heights of archetypal infinity. Individual universes are infinitely large, and also function under fundamentally different laws, such as whether or not life is possible, which physical constants do or do not exist, etc. These higher dimensions are not necessarily properties that span the whole cosmology, however, and a single spacetime continuum can easily be construed as having an indefinite number of higher dimensional planes within itself. This is not strictly the endpoint of the material world, even as the spacetime continuum itself is nothing but one among endless universes that themselves form an infinite chain comprising the atoms of a supercosmos existing as an even larger world. Each universe is divided into an indefinite number of dimensional phases. And this hierarchy extends even further, with universes existing within larger universes, and escaping from the latter and into the former is compared to breaking through the bonds of local material limitations entirely. All of these material, spatio-temporal realms are nothing but an infinitesimal, small wholeness, encompassed by the first gate, a construct separating the physical realm from the dark formlessness that transcends it. Past it, there are only metaphysical worlds beyond the concepts of time, space, and dimensions entirely, which are appropriately described as transdimensional and undimensioned multiple times. Universes extend infinitely in all directions, of which there are an infinite number in each universe, and higher dimensions have a definite qualitative superiority over lower dimensions. These infinite dimensional universes in and of themselves are merely atoms in a greater cosmos, which makes up one higher level in a fractal of realities, and uncountably infinite numbers of higher dimensions. Upon traversing the first gate, Randolph Carter finds himself completely detached from the limitations of space and time, and loses his physical form entirely in the process, becoming identifiable neither as a child nor as an adult, but only as a vague, abstract impression of an entity named Randolph Carter. Randolph Carter is one of the major characters in Cthulu Mythos and is a human exploring the grand cosmos. To some he is like the alter ego of the author, H.P. Lovecraft. Now, further ahead, we see the universe of dreams. The physical universe, bound by space and time, is nothing but a bubble to the infinity that is the universe of dreams. An unnamed narrator meets a Greco-Roman deity of sleep and dreams called Hypnos, and with help of mystical drugs, Hypnos takes them through the realm of dreaming. And within this universe, Hypnos and the unnamed narrator then begin to ascend into increasingly more primal levels of reality, becoming less and less restricted by the limitations of the material world as they plunge into more remote regions. The breaking of these limitations is represented in this world by a series of cloudy obstacles, which the two occasionally tear through during their travels. Then, they eventually come across remote areas that the narrator describes as limitless vacua beyond all thought and entity that unfold entirely new perceptions of infinity upon the two, with the narrator himself eventually reaching a final obstacle, incalculably denser than the last, which he is unable to penetrate, but which Hypnos passes through without much difficulty. As the narrator abandons the world of dreams and his perception shifts back to that of the material world, he also describes his sense of infinity itself as reverting to the local scale, indicating that these vacua indeed marked higher levels of infinity, which he and Hypnos ascended through to eventually reach the void outside of all existence, inhabited by the other gods. Beyond that is the outer void beyond existence, inhabited by the other gods, which is described as a place where no dreams reach. This is consistent with how the narrator of Hypnos was unable to penetrate the last obstacle leading to it, in spite of attaining a similar nature to the title character during his travels throughout higher spheres of reality. It is also described as an ultimate, genuine infinity, which holds the local spacetime globule and presumably the rest of existence, as well as an atom of itself. And Walter Gilman, an expert mathematician who had also studied Eldritch lore, concluded that it exists beyond the mathematics of any cosmos. In Through the Gates of the Silver Key, we are introduced to the idea that reality as perceived by mortals and lesser beings is nothing but a fragmentary, partial illusion that exists as an imperfect aspect of the true nature of the world, which is a changeless, static oneness, devoid of any differentiations, that exists beyond all perspectives, holding the ultimate void as a mere reduction of itself. The inhabitants of this ultimate reality are the true selves, the outer gods known as archetypes, eternal, unchanging, and uncreated entities who participate in this totality beyond all divisions, and hold all lesser entities as nothing but facets of themselves. The supreme archetype is an all-encompassing oneness that exists as all in one and one in all of limitless being and self, acting as the animating essence of all existence that subsumes even the ultimate mystery which underlies all manifested phenomena and in which the archetypes themselves participate in. Supreme archetype encompasses all things, with the archetypes being just tiny facets of it. It is the peak of the cosmology. Now, before scaling Yog-Sothoth, let's just talk about some confusing stuff going on in the verse, which makes it a bit tough to scale. Firstly, the original book by the author is almost a century old and is a book on cosmic horrors. This book was published when power scaling was not even a thing, and some of the cardinals that we use were not even discovered till then. So some of the terminologies would have to be taken literally instead of considering them just as hyperbole, as the verse's main focus is on cosmic horrors. So the author must have meant it seriously instead of just exaggeration. So terms like grandeur infinity would be scaled both, with their lowest and highest interpretation here. Secondly, Azathoth does not dream the end to existence. That's a common misconception that people have while talking about Cthulu Mythos. Entities like Yog-Sothoth and some of the outer gods are possibly above him in the hierarchy. Thirdly, due to some statements, there is uncertainty about who is the real supreme archetype here, as statements regarding Yog-Sothoth and supreme archetype have a lot in common, which might indicate that Yog is actually the supreme archetype itself, whereas some statement just that Yog is nothing but a mere fragment of the true supreme archetype, whereas some statement suggests that supreme archetype is actually the true forms of both Azathoth and Yog, as Yog is portrayed as the all-encompassing aspect of the supreme archetype, whereas Azathoth is considered as the ruler aspect. But anyway, there is a lot of confusing aspects while scaling the verse, but we will scale both with lowest and highest interpretation for the sake of better coverage. So let's start with the lowest interpretation first. So due to statements regarding uncountable infinities, higher transcending order, viewing mathematics and physics as vague, existing in a plane which transcends all the concepts and hierarchies, embodying the entire existence, Platonic concepts, and furthermore statements suggesting its grand prowess, Yog-Sothoth could be scaled up to baseline boundless with the lowest interpretation. The reason he scales to baseline boundless is mainly due to the mention of uncountable infinity and conceptual transcendence, all together with the hierarchies of archetypes and gates. It transcends and embodies. The statement regarding it viewing mathematics as vague is not considered for now. So now, what if we take Yog's highest interpretations? Will he scale drastically higher? Yes, he will, unimaginably higher than the current scale. If we take the highest interpretation of Yog-Sothoth, then he is the supreme archetype, and whatever mentioned about him previously is just our perception of the incomprehensible being. Altogether, if we take the statements of the unnamed narrator exploring the universe of dreams, The hierarchies of gates can be noticed to have similarities with higher infinite sets, which affirms existence of levels of infinities in the verse, and the ultimate void is superior to it all along with other gods existing there, and the ultimate void itself is just a mere reduction of archetypes, and all of this being just a small part of the supreme archetype, which is Sothoth himself, and as ultimate void is stated to be beyond all mathematics by an expert mathematician. After thorough investigation, we can say that Yog scales beyond tiering with highest interpretation, as even an inferior point in the verse reaches a state beyond mathematics, and the entire levels of infinities are represented by the hierarchies of gates. But scaling CM always felt wrong to me, as the verse's main motto of cosmic horror is also to represent that whatever portrayed in the verse is just our perception of a higher reality, being, whose even a fragment of knowledge is incomprehensible to us. So whatever mentioned is just the tiny part of the true scale of the cosmos, and trying to scale that is pointless and goes against the entire story's narrative of incomprehensibility.